Hello everyone, this is Zach here, and welcome to the Insatiable Wartales Crossbowman guide. In this guide, we're going to cover, obviously, the Crossbowman class, and just for some context, Shiro Games released a DLC just a few days ago, and as part of that release, they gave us a free class. Now, you don't need to own the DLC to get access to the class, so just to let you know that. So in this guide, I'm just going to cover this Crossbowman class. I have started playing it. I'm finding it really fun. I really like it. Amongst all the, I guess, distance classes, so obviously you've got the archer, really as another class to compare with. Not so good compared to Crossbowman. Crossbowman definitely outranks the archer for a lot of reasons, such as the fact that it has really high DPS. You don't need a lot of valor points to actually ensure you have high DPS. You can get a lot of kills. Super satisfying headshots as usual. Quite a dynamic and mobile class as well. And I've tested it without super gear. When I say super gear, it's like legendary armor, equipment, or gear you find out in the world which has stats or additional statuses that will benefit your gameplay. So this is really just based on what you can find in your forge, or what you can craft in your forge. So without further ado, let's have a look at this class and let's get started. The first thing we'll get started is the build. When you hit level 2, go for Valorous Victory. The reason is because we're looking to kill multiple units, so every unit you kill, you gain 1 temporary valor point. When you hit level 3, you have 3 specializations to choose from: Scorpion, Gunner, or Cannoneer. Go for Scorpion. Scorpion gives you the bolt skill, and basically on top of dealing damage, you also apply, well, randomly one of 3 status effects, which is burning, bleeding, or poison. Now, these status effects reduces the enemy's health at the end of the turn. So burning reduces it by 15%, bleeding 20%, and poison 5%, but it's actually applying 2 poison, so it's 10%. So the random status effect reduces their health between 10 to 20%. Now, if you can, upgrade it as well, upgrade the skill. When you upgrade the skill, you unlock Consecutive Shot, which when you trigger it, and we'll talk about what you have to do to trigger it, you immediately apply the effects of poison, burning, and bleeding, which means if the enemy is suffering from the bleeding status effect, or would have suffered, you straight away reduce the health by 20%. Now, how do we trigger this? It's triggered if a precision skill has already been used by this unit during this round, as you can see from the description of Consecutive Shot. So what's a precision skill? Now, one of the skills is called Aim. Aim, you gain Deafness, and Deafness, if you look at the description, range of the next attack is doubled, and precision is enhanced. So it enhances precision. So that skill is a precision skill. So if you were to use that before using this bolt skill, and you basically can immediately trigger the effects of either one of those statuses. Okay, so that's why this is pretty good. And it actually, further along this skills tree, another skill will actually complement this very well. Now when you hit level 5, go for Masterful Movement. What this does is this unit gains 2 aim every time they reload. So every time they reload their weapon, you get 2 aim. Now, unfortunately, Shiro Games has used the same terminology, so it can be a bit confusing, but be mindful, this aim is different to this aim. Okay, this is an auxiliary skill, aim. This is the aim related to the Crossbowman skills. So in this case, an aim ensures that your crossbow damage of the next attack is increased by 10%. So in the upgraded version, every time you reload, you get 2 aim, so 20% increased damage for your next attack. Upgrade this as well, because when you upgrade it, you get 3 aim, so 30% extra damage for your next attack. Now when you hit level 8, go for Strategic Grip, because this complements the Scorpion specialization very well. What it does is each round, so not each battle, it's each round, the first time this unit applies a penalty, so any one of these statuses are a penalty, considered a penalty, okay, they reload. So when you reload, it goes back to this skill, Masterful Movement. You get 2 aim. The upgraded version, remember, 3 aim. So you get between 20 or 30% extra damage for your next attack, depending on whether you've upgraded this skill. Now, if you upgrade Strategic Grip, you will also get 2 aim on top of the reload. So if you think about it cumulatively, or I think it's additively, it adds up. You're gonna get 2 aim here, and you're gonna get 3 aim here, again assuming both skills are upgraded. That's 50% extra damage for your next attack. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so your first attack, you're not only gonna get reload, right, from this, but it ensures you can go another turn and you have 50% damage. When you hit level 10, go for Lone Wolf. Again, we're trying to maximize damage here, so if there are no allied units within 5 meters, this unit gains the Lone Wolf status. Damage increased by 10%, damage reduced by 10%. To be honest, if you want to play more flexibly with a second weapon, because you found a second weapon that you really like the skills, and it allows you to just swap weapons in battle, that's completely fine as well. It's only 10%. So kind of a personal preference, but again, I'm trying to maximize DPS, so I've chosen Lone Wolf. Now, when you hit level 12, you have 2 options. You have the Bravery skill, Piercing Shot, which deals damage to all units and knocks them back by 6 meters. Now, if it's a fatal blow, you get a reload. Or you have a class specialization, which means you unlock a skill from a previous level. Now, I've chosen class specialization so that I can unlock Solid Grip. Now, Solid Grip, what it does is each round, the first time this unit lands a critical hit, they reload. Now, for those familiar with my gameplays, I always try to hit quite a high crit hit chance. So in this build, I'm going to do the same, and I'll show you in the stats build as well. And if I do that, I get an extra reload. Okay, and if I upgrade this skill on top of a reload, I also get 2 aim. So very similar to Strategic Grip, except Strategic Grip's trigger is the penalty, while Solid Grip's trigger is critical hit. So if you think about it, if I were to trigger, now this will trigger anyway, regardless, right? Because you're already applying a status effect as a Scorpion. This will trigger if you have high crit chance. Now imagine if you triggered that plus this, you get 2 reloads and you get 4 aim. So 2 plus 2, that's 4. But because you get 2 reloads, you've also triggered this twice, Master Move movement. And that's 6 aim. So 6 aim here, 2 here, and 2 here. That's 10. If you manage to trigger this, that means your next crossbow attack damage is gonna increase by 100%. That's pretty awesome. So those are the skills I highly suggest you follow or choose in this build. Like I said, Lone Wolf, I'd say you can go with personal preference. I haven't gone up to level 15 because that's a whole new specialization. This class build is purely based on the Scorpion build. The next thing I'd like to talk about are the attribute points. I would personally recommend investing everything into dexterity. So there's a reason for that. I've done some calculations and it looks like pure dexterity actually gives you the largest damage output compared to a pure crit build or a hybrid crit dexterity build. Now my crit looks high, that's because I haven't done anything, I haven't added any attribute points. It's just because I have the Bloodthirsty trait, Tinkerer, Profession, Stuffed Cabbage, Food, and also Path bonus. But I'll explain that further and why I've actually got all these additional bonuses in there. So, in terms of the calculations, let me just jump quickly to this table here. Now there are 3 tables. There's a blue table which shows the pure dex build, the orange table showing the pure crit build, and the green table showing the hybrid build. Now, I've only gone up to level 11, and the reason for that is even though the game allows me to go up to level 15, there was no real point because in my mind, if you're already level 15, you pretty much hit end game, and you probably don't need this guide. And you're probably even better than me. So it's really more for those who are progressing towards end game, wherever you may be in that playthrough. So with 11 levels, I've just basically looked at, okay, what's the min-max damage, the crit percent, the crit damage, the raw damage output, and then the damage output once you take into account the crit chance and crit damage. So at level 11, damage output is 31.7. For pure crit build, it's 21.3, significantly lower. While for a hybrid build, roughly 50-50, not quite 50-50, but it's about 27.4. But you can see the pattern here that from a pure crit build, as we shift towards investing into dex, our damage output increases. When you go pure dex, that's the highest you'll get to. Now what if we add a weapon at level 11 that gives you 52 dex? My damage output for pure dex is 75.9, pure crit is pretty much even, but outperforming pure dex at 76.1, while the hybrid build is even better at 77.9. Now that's because we now have more base damage, and therefore the crit can actually build on that. However, as some of you may know, if you follow my playthrough, I do like to get most of my classes up to or close to 100% crit chance. So what does that do to the damage output? So at 100% crit chance, our damage output is now 155 for a pure dex build. For pure crit, it's only 129, and for a hybrid build, 142. So again, why is this happening? You would think that the higher your crit chance and crit damage, well, higher crit chance, you better have crit damage, and therefore damage output should be higher. I believe it's because critical damage isn't scaling faster than the scaling of critical hit chance, so to speak. So every critical hit chance, you're not getting enough critical damage to actually justify investing in critical hit chance. Because every time you invest in critical hit chance, you do get an increase in critical hit damage. So that is the basis for me suggesting why you should invest everything into a pure dex build. Now, what happens in terms of you've reached this level 11, you're only at 18% crit chance, so how do you get it to 100? Well, you can get it pretty close, so the difference is about 82% that we need to get to. So we can do that by multiple critical hit chance sources. So the first, as you saw when you looked at my Scorpion character, is Tinkerer Profession. At master level, you can get 12% critical hit chance. This is the Crime and Chaos Path, CNC, level 12. So at level 12, for every level that you're wanted, you get 5% crit chance. So at level 5, you get 25%. In terms of food, if you consume either delicious stuffed cabbage or a delicious wolf and mushroom gratin, you'll get an extra 15% crit chance as well. Your Colossal Armor Layer, same thing, you will get an extra 20% crit chance. And Bloodthirsty trait, if your Crossbowman or Scorpion has that trait, that's an extra 3%. So that's 75%, that's pretty close to the 82% we're striving for. So 75 plus 18, that's 93. Pretty close. If you have the Pirates of Billion DLC, you can get a Mer Brooch, and that alone gives you 50% additional crit chance. Now, the draw or the downside is you get -1 movement. So I'm not a big fan of this, because for me, if you're a range class, I need that movement so that I'm able to position myself well on the map and hit the right enemies. So that's the justification as to why I am suggesting the dex build. Of course, you can also boost up your critical hit chance by finding equipment out in the real world. In terms of Wartales world, not the real world you're in. Some equipment gives you additional boosts to critical hit chance, and you can actually leverage off those to increase your critical hit chance even more. Now, equipment is an interesting bit. As I mentioned in the introduction, I have crafted this guide on the basis that you can use equipment that you craft from your forge for two reasons. I want to show you that the equipment from the forge is good enough to start with, without worrying about finding the right equipment drop from the world or legendary items, and also that you may feel free to experiment further with other equipment drops from the world and tweak your playstyle. So the equipment that I'm using, as you can see, is just Akkadian steel waistcoat that I've crafted, Akkadian steel crossbow, and also Akkadian steel beret. Everything is craftable from the forge. One thing you should get though is in your paths, if you have unlocked some path points in Power and Glory, go for Art of the Forge if you can if you're able to choose that, because that basically increases your stats, forge weapon stats by 10% and forge armor stats by 10% as well. What that does is all the stats you'd normally get is 10% much better when forged. The other thing is optimized gear. Okay, this is from a compendium. If you have matching equipment, their stats are increased by additional 10%. So all this really helps. If you get drops from the world, you won't necessarily get matching equipment, so this in itself is already increasing your stats by 10%. What else should we cover? Armor layers. So you can see from my equipment, the other good benefit, I guess, of crafting your own equipment is you get armor layers. And in this case, I have 3 armor layers, and I'm able to then use the colossal reinforced layer of the Falcon. Now, each colossal reinforced layer of the Falcon, I'll just quickly show you. Bear with me as I scroll down. It gives me 6% critical hit and 4 dexterity. So, as you can see from the build, I have 3. So 3 times 6 critical hit gives me 18%, and 3 times 4 dexterity gives me 12. That is why my equipment is 18. Now, you're wondering, hold on. That you don't always get 3 armor layers. That is true. Again, you have to choose your champion craftsman to enable you to have 1 additional armor layer slot, maximum 3. Okay, so you can then have 3 instead of just 2. So this will help you maximize damage as well as critical hit chance. Now, if you aren't able to get the colossal reinforced layer of Falcon because you haven't unlocked it, that's completely fine. You can still go with the silver as well as the bronze layers. Alright, so the reinforced layer of the Falcon for silver is still pretty decent. You get critical hit chance of 3% and dexterity of 2 for every armor layer of the Falcon, reinforced layer of the Falcon. That's in terms of armor layers. What about oils? Now, there are 2 oils. One I'd say is definitely mandatory for me, and that is the sharpening oil. The sharpening oil basically adds 10% crit damage, as you can see. The other oil is the swiftness oil. Now, the swiftness oil I've chosen, it's actually flexible. You can just choose whatever you prefer. I just thought this is the next best thing. Happy for people to let me know if there's something better. But basically, there's a 50% chance to increase dexterity. So again, more dexterity, more damage means we can increase our DPS. I complement that with the swiftness oil belt as well. Okay, it has an additional 50% chance to apply its effect, which is the swiftness oil. So the oil on the weapon already has a 50% chance to increase dexterity. With the belt, it's an extra additively, or when you add it together, that's 50% as well. That's 100% chance to apply its effect. So 100% chance every time I deal damage with a skill, I would definitely get increased dexterity for 3 rounds. Now, what else? If you were to explore the world of Wartales and you find drops, what should you focus on? So depending on where your build is at, you might want to focus on critical hit chance, maybe dex. If you're looking for specific armor drops that have good stats that are different to what you normally get when you forge them, definitely look for armor layers slots. Movement is good if you choose not to invest the attribute point in movement and you maybe want to invest it in dexterity or maybe critical hit to get it closer to 100%. That's completely fine as well. Precision is good in case you have allies that are in the way of the enemy you want to attack. And range. If you have range, that's also pretty good. So that's it in terms of the equipment build. Pretty simple, not too fancy. And I hope that helps with your build as well. What's next? Auxiliary skills. So auxiliary skills help support or augment your characters. In this case, I have 3 auxiliary skills I would highly recommend. The first one you definitely must have, and you can buy them if you don't have it when you get your character or recruit your Crossbowman. You can always buy it from the Brotherhood Training Grounds. Is aim. So aim gives you deafness, and as mentioned in the build guide, or the skills build guide, is that it allows you to trigger the precision skill, which then allows you to trigger consecutive shot, which immediately triggers the effects of burning, bleeding, or poison. Okay, so that is a must-have. The other two depends on your playstyle, but I would highly recommend you get it. One is first aid. It's been really useful for me because it allows me to save allies from dying. I always play in Iron Man mode, save or safe mode. That means I only get one chance. If one of my allies die in combat, I can't go back and start the battle again or start from a previous save, unfortunately. So this has been so useful to me. The other is run, again for not, how should I put them, for flimsy characters or low HP, low armor characters. I find run very useful, especially if you're ranged. You're meant to not be engaged in close combat. So if you accidentally make a mistake and an enemy unit comes up close, engages you in close combat, you can then use this skill to disengage and run away so that you don't get slaughtered and killed. Again, ranged classes should be killing from range. Now, I briefly mentioned before when we were looking at critical hit chance, the best profession to choose from. Again, if you want to increase your crit hit to maximize your damage output, choose Tinkerer. At Master Tinkerer, you get 12% hit chance, so you do add a substantial amount of critical hit percentage to your build if you choose the profession Tinkerer. The last thing I'd like to go through in this guide before I give an assessment of the Crossbowman class, but specifically the Scorpion specialization, is just a combat playthrough to show you how it can actually be played and what kind of damage output you'll likely see. Now, I am in Drumbach County. I am trying to kill this ringleader, Almac the Scarecrow. They're level 14. Difficulty is Expert Combat difficulty. So let's give this a go. Now, there are a couple of strategies you can deploy depending on whether you're targeting a tougher or softer opponent, if I can call it that, or enemy. So what I'm trying to do is, let's see, if I pick soft ones, there's about 3 here. This guy is an arrow defense shield, so we don't want to hit him. Yeah, we could go with that as well because we've got a poacher there. Actually, the Hulam is much weaker, so let's try that one. So I've isolated Scorpion a bit because I want him to get the Lone Wolf buff, which is increasing damage by 10%. Now I'm going to reload first, because once I reload, I get 3 stacks of aim, and that's increasing my damage by 30%. I am going to probably... let's hit this guy first. Okay, that's an instant kill. That gives me 50% crit, 50% extra damage because I have 5 stacks of aim. And also, I've now increased my dexterity by 10% because of the swiftness oil, which increases my damage. So let's now go for this boss. Okay. Now we applied the status effect. What we can do now is apply aim and apply the immediate effect. Well, I think we kind of overkilled, but that's completely fine. So we still have 1 more shot left. So we've already killed 2. We could probably go for him. Okay, that's close enough, and he died from the status effect as well, poison. So we managed to kill 3. That's pretty decent, to be honest, and pretty powerful. Again, he's only level 13, and the enemies we've been killing were about level 14. So that's it in terms of combat playthrough. I hope you are able to see how powerful the Crossbowman and specifically the Scorpion build can be, and that you enjoy it when you do play it. So overall, my assessment of the Scorpion Crossbowman build is an A+. Not quite S in terms of super, because that is reserved for the swordsman, If you check out my Unstoppable Swordsman guide, I include the link below. You'll see why, but the Scorpion comes really close, as you saw in the combat trial. And I forgot to mention during combat, it was actually on expert difficulty, if I did not mention that already. If I did, please forgive me. But other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this guide, and you will enjoy the class. And until next time, take care. Have a great day. Bye.